Okay. We are on the articulations or appendicular skeleton, page 27, 28 of your lab manual, page 35, 36 if you have your PDF. And what we're going to be doing is page 27, 28. Let's look at the objectives. Be able to identify each of the bone and bone markings listed below. All right. So on the scapula right here, you need to identify this as the scapula. But there are 6 different parts of the scapula that you need to identify. The glenoid fossa, the acromion process, the spine, so forth and so on. You can look those up very easily and identify those in your atlas or in your book. The same for the humerus, radius, ulna, carpals, metacarpals, phalanges. The other thing that you need to be able to do is distinguish the difference between right and left for 4 bones. The scapula, the humerus, the os cox, there are 2 of them. This is your pelvic bones, if you will, and the femur. And this right here is your femur right there. Number 4, ignore that because no need, they will not ask you any questions back there. So not to worry about those. Be able to describe which of the listed markings from articulations or joints with each other. And one thing I want to make you clear of, if you take a look right here, this is the humerus obviously, and this is the scapula. And basically the way the humerus and the scapula work, it's a ball and socket joint right here. And this is what they call an articulation, where the 2 make a joint. This is known as the shoulder joint. So there's 2 things you're going to be looking at. There is a bone and its articulation point with the articulation point of another bone. Okay? So we can point right here to the glenoid fossa and say, what bone goes there? And that would be the humerus, this bone. Or, be careful how it's asked, what is the articulation point of the bone that goes here? Or what is the other articulation point? That would be the head of the humerus. So when we go through this chart, and if you take a look of what we're going to be doing on page 29, page 30, 31, and 32, we're going to be looking at how each of these bones come together. Okay? So you need to know that there is a bone with its articulation point articulating with the articulation point of another bone. So there's always 2 things, the bone and the articulation point on that bone. All right? So when they come together, okay, there's 4 things happening. The head of the humerus is articulating with the glenoid fossa of the scapula. All right? So I could point right here and go, what bone goes there? Ah, humerus. But if I ask, what is the articulation point that goes here? You need to say, head of the humerus. All right? Head of the humerus. And I'll help make it that clear for you as we move along. All right? All right, so getting started with page 29, up in the top right there, what I'm going to show you is the articulation here on our skeleton, and then I'll say let's fill the box in. Are you ready? All right, first of all, you have the clavicle. It's kind of an S-shaped bone like this. It has a flat end, it has a rounded end. But it is the clavicle that articulates medially. Medially means in the midline. So it's the clavicle that articulates medially with the manubrium. The manubrium, this part right here, of the sternum. So the medial articulation for the clavicle is with the manubrium of the sternum. And laterally, that's off to the side, it is the clavicle that articulates with the acromion of the scapula. Scapula, acromion. Acromion is your shoulder bump that's right up there. Okay? So if you look in your book on The first box, you want to fill this in. The clavicle articulates medially with the manubrium of the sternum. The clavicle articulates laterally with the acromion of the scapula. So there's 4 different things in there. There's 2 articulation points and 2 names of the bones. You got clavicle and you have scapula. All right? All right. Off to the side of the scapula is a thing called the glenoid fossa. The word fossa means depression. So you have the glenoid fossa of the scapula that articulates with the head of the humerus to form the shoulder joint. Okay, let's fill the box in. The glenoid fossa of the scapula articulates with the head of the humerus to form the shoulder joint. Okay? Now, let's follow the humerus down. And I must say, before I go any further, our first of 4 bones that you need to know the difference in terms of, is this a left scapula or is this a left scapula? Well, you need to know how to orient them. So the acromion goes up on the top. So if I were to turn him around, the acromion is superior. The point of the scapula, this is pointing down, okay, inferior. So acromion, superior, the tip of the subscapular fossa points down. This is the smooth part, that's the part that goes over your ribs, all right? So as I turn this around, it becomes very clear that this must be a right scapula because that is the only way that a humerus can attach to the glenoid fossa. Okay? You're not going to make it go this way because this is supposed to be up against the ribs. So if I put this over here, well, now I have my humerus in the middle of my back. So this has to be a right scapula. This has to be a left scapula. Okay. All right, let's bring him back around here. All right, so there's some parts of the humerus that we need to know. Okay. Obviously, the head is always going to point in medially. All right. So this belongs on this side. This is the next bone that you need to know left and right of. And what I have right here is I have a left one in my hand because the ball has to be pointing inward to the body. You can't have the ball just pointing out like that. It's kind of ridiculous. All right. And I know that this is the anterior part because there's 2 grooves right here. Okay, the capitulum. Okay, and the trochlear notch right here. All right. In the back is smooth with a huge depression. This is the olecranon fossa. The olecranon fossa. All right. So this is what's in the back. So if I know top and if I know bottom, if I know front and I know back, the only way this could fit into this is it has to be a left humerus right here. This is our left humerus. And if I had a right humerus, I could show you that really quickly. And that would be this side over here. So the ball comes over here. I still have my trochlear notch, and I have my capitulum right there. All right, so let's kind of show you how things set up at the bottom of your humerus. Okay, there are 2 bones in the forearm. One is called the radius because one end, the superior end, is a circle. Half of a circle is a radius. The other one is, this is the trochlea. And this is the trochlear notch right here. because the trochlear notch articulates with the trochlea. And the head of the radius goes right with the capitulum of the humerus. So you have the capitulum and you have the trochlea. All right? So if we go back from the beginning, the clavicle articulates medially with the manubrium of the sternum, laterally with the acromion of the scapula. Then it is the glenoid fossa of the scapula that articulates with the head of the humerus. Following the medial aspect of the humerus, it is the trochlea that articulates with the trochlear notch of the trochlea. It is the capitulum of the humerus that articulates with the head of the radius. All right? So if you were going to fill your box in really quickly, the head of the radius articulates with the radial notch of the ulna medially, and with the capitulum, C-A-P-I-T-U-L-U-M, the capitulum of the humerus proximally. It is the trochlear notch of the ulna. I called it the trochlea, but this is your ulna, and the reason you know it's the ulna is because the trochlear notch makes kind of a U shape. So ulna, it is the lower forearm bone along with the radius. All right. So the trochlear notch of the ulna articulates with the trochlea of the humerus proximally. All right. Don't forget there is a big hole in the back of your humerus, and this is called the olecranon fossa. The olecranon fossa. It is the posterior humerus that articulates with the trochlear notch of the ulna. So the trochlear notch of the ulna, see how it goes into the back right there. And that kind of controls exactly how much you can extend your arm. Just like that. Okay? All right, if you're following in your book, the bones that articulate from the wrist are, the first line, metacarpals. Next, the smaller bones of the wrist are called carpals. The little notch on the side of your wrist is called the styloid process. Styloid process. The bone way over to the other side is the ulna. The one closest, that larger bone in the picture on page 30 or 38, is the radius. So we learned the styloid process on the radius. Now in the anatomical position, okay, the anatomical position is feet together, your hands are out so that your thumb is pointing outward. With your thumb pointing outward in the anatomical position, which forearm bone is in the medial position? And that would be the ulna. Okay, so from beginning to end, it is the clavicle that articulates medially with the manubrium of the sternum, laterally with the acromion of the scapula. It is the glenoid fossa of the scapula that articulates with the head of the humerus. Going down the medial aspect, it is the trochlea of the humerus that articulates with the trochlear notch of the ulna. Laterally, it is the capitulum of the humerus that articulates with the head of the radius. And oh, I need to add this. The head of the radius articulates at the radial notch on the ulna, just like that. So that right there is the radial notch. A nice little smooth depression to where the bone can fit in. This is what makes the arm rotate over each other just like that. All right, and then these are your metacarpals, carpals, styloid process. Bone over here is the ulna. This is the radius, and in the anatomical position, the medial bone is the ulna. All right. Turns out our next bone, besides the good old scapula, we need to know, is this a left or right? Is this a left or right humerus? Well, the head always has to be pointing in. All right. So this head would have to point this way, so that would fit. But the problem is we see the olecranon fossa. This is the back of it. So we have to turn this over, and we have to see the trochlear notch and the capitulum. But we would have to move that over here, so this must be a left humerus. And this is the right humerus. Okay. All right. We have two interesting bones right here. Slide him over to the edge really quick. These right here, both of these are called os coxa. If you want to know how to spell os coxa, look at the top of page 32 in the top box at the bottom. There it is, OS space COXA, os coxa. All right. There are several parts of the os cox that you need to know, the pelvic bones, they have been called. One of the biggest things, you have to be able to orient these because you need to know if this is a right or a left os cox. So basically this big giant wing up here, that is the top. This bottom right here, okay, this is on the bottom. And what is facing you is smooth versus rough. Smooth versus rough. Okay? This is also a left os cox. This is a right os cox. They come together in the front where the two pubic bones are held together by a band of fibrocartilage. This is called the pubic symphysis. So what goes back here in the back area? Well, we learned that last time we talked, and this is the sacrum. And the sacrum simply fits in the back to form the sacroiliac joint posteriorly, okay? And the pubic symphysis is a joint that is in the anterior or front position. So if I already have an os cox that's put together for us, this is the pelvic girdle right here, okay? A right and left ilium with a sacrum in the middle and your pubic symphysis in the front right there, okay? Well, let's go ahead and fill in the box on page 31. The sacroiliac joint is formed by the rough auricular surface of the ilium. So here's the ilium. This is the rough, this is the ilium, this is the rough part right here, and the sacrum goes from its rough surface to that rough surface. So the sacroiliac joint is formed by the rough auricular surface of the ilium and the rough auricular surface of the sacrum to form a sacroiliac joint, of which you have two. Okay, if I put that down, you have this left one and you have the right one. How do you know if you have a right or left os cox? Well, we now know how to orient them up. The iliac crest must go up, and the pelvic bone is lower and in the front. So you put those two together like this, and the sacrum goes right here. So the way that I've taught students, if you're looking at the pelvic girdle right here And if facing you, the rough auricula surface is on the right, then this must be a right ilium. If the rough auricular surface is pointing to the left, then you have a left ilium. Okay? All right. Let's take a os coxa right here. Besides making its own joint in the rough auricula surface posteriorly and at the pubic bones in the front anteriorly, if we turn it, there is a huge hole right here. This big hole right here. That is known as the acetabulum. Okay? And what fits into the acetabulum is something called the femur. It is the upper leg bone of your leg, the femur. And the femur fits right into the acetabulum. So it is the head of the femur that articulates with the acetabulum of the os coxa. And that allows you to walk like that. Or if you're like Bruce Lee, kick somebody. All right, let's fill the box in. Approximately the head of the femur articulates with the acetabulum of the os cox. All right? Any problems with that? Shouldn't be. All right? And I think that was os coxa was our third, right and left. Femur is our second, left and right. So let's show you how to tell whether or not you have a left or right femur. First of all, you need to figure out, obviously this has to be pointing medially, okay? It has to go into a socket, so is this the front of the bone or is this the back of the bone? Well, these two condyles that you see right here, those are condyles, those are in the back. And right here you have the patellar surface. Okay, the patella tendon goes over there, and the patella, a knee bone, goes right here. The patella tendon stretches from the femur down to the tibia. The tibia would be this bone down here. Okay, so, and one other bone needs to be right here, the fibula, and I didn't pull a fibula out, but I'll do it in just a second. All right, so anyway, now that you know this is the front and these two condyles sticking out are in the back, then you can easily see that this becomes a right femur. This would become, this is the front, this is the back, this would become a left femur. Okay? Very good. Let me find a fibula in here. Alright, so fibula. Fibula runs down the outer edge. Here is your tibia down here, and we lock it in down here. Just like your forearm has two bones, your foreleg has two bones. Okay, the fibula and the tibia. Okay. All right, but let's go ahead and show you how these bones go together. Okay. So this is my femur right here, and this is the distal end right here that has two condyles, and the two condyles are just two enlargements of a bone. And you have a medial condyle and a lateral condyle. The medial condyle is identified from the medial aspect of the head, because this is what fits in, and then you go down. So this is the medial condyle, this is the lateral condyle, and they sit on top of two condyles of the tibia. So the medial condyle of the femur articulates with the medial condyle of the tibia. And it is the lateral condyle of the femur that articulates with the lateral condyle of the tibia. And they just sit on top of one another right there. Okay? All right, so let's fill in our box really quickly. The patellar surface of the femur. The patellar surface of the femur articulates anteriorly with the patella. Here's the patella. Bam, right there. Okay? Then, need to squeeze this in. Small letters. The LAT/MED, the lateral and medial condyles of the femur, articulate with, fill this in real small, the lateral and medial condyles of the tibia. Right here. It says label this bone marking. That is the medial condyle. Right here, the medial condyle. And its claim to fame is, if I put my patella here, the patella tendon stretches from the femur over the top of the patella and then attaches right here, okay, onto the tibia, called the tibial tuberosity. By what marking does the patellar ligament attach to the tibia? The tibial tuberosity. Little tuberosity means a little bump right there. So the tendon just goes across right here. Okay? It says label this bone marking. That is the medial condyle. What does it articulate with? Well, the medial condyle of the femur. By what marking does the patellar ligament attach to the tibia? To the tibial tuberosity. All right. Now we need to go down to the bottom of the leg. Femur, tibia, patella, patella tendon, from the top of the femur around the patella to the tibial tuberosity. Might have a right and a left one, but it should work like this. Yeah, much better. No, this goes like this. All right. Let me get them set up. All right. There we go. All right. So I want to address down here on the bottom.